What if the NFL passed on a quarterback? Who's about to prove them all wrong? Because right now, a storm's brewing in the league and it's all tied to one name, Shadur Sanders. The son of Coach Prime isn't just fighting for respect, he's rewriting the story everyone thought they had figured out. A fifth-round draft pick? That was supposed to be the end of his headline. But now, well, NFL veterans are speaking out, Hall of Famers are taking sides, and one Super Bowl-winning coach might be losing sleep over a decision that could haunt his franchise for years. Rodgers made a comment that shook the league. Mike Tomlin made another that raised even more eyebrows. And meanwhile, Cleveland, of all places, may have quietly pulled off the steal of the century. This isn't just about stats or scouting reports anymore. It's about revenge. It's about redemption. And the craziest part, it all started with 141 mistakes. Let's get into it. Let's rewind to the draft. Shadur Sanders wasn't just another quarterback prospect. This was a guy with elite numbers, big game poise, and arguably one of the most scrutinized college careers in recent memory. He threw for over 4,000 yards, racked up 37 touchdowns, and led Colorado in a way that made even his hardest critics pause. Analysts projected him as a solid first-rounder. Some had him late first, most agreed on early second. One thing was certain, no one expected this man to be sitting around waiting for his name to be called all the way into round 5. Pick 142 overall. That's where he landed. 141 players went ahead of him. Linebackers, backup quarterbacks, linemen, nickel corners, special teams guys, most of them you'll never hear about again. And Shedeur, the kid who went from Jackson State to Colorado, dragging entire programs into the national spotlight, was sitting there, watching every single name roll by. It didn't make sense. Not on paper, not on film, not from a leadership perspective. Coaches always say they want a guy with moxie, with grit. Well, Shedeur had all of that, and somehow none of it seemed to matter. People started talking. He's only good because of his dad. He's not ready. He's too flashy. The kind of criticisms that say more about the critics than the player. Because if you actually looked at what Shedeur did on the field, what he endured, and how he performed, the idea he wasn't worth a top 50 pick becomes laughable. So why did he fall? That's where things get messy. Sources around the league claimed Shedeur made a critical mistake. He didn't hire a certified NFL agent. Instead, he only listened to his father, Deion. Now, Deion Sanders knows football better than most. But in the world of war rooms, team meetings, and behind-the-scenes politics, an NFL agent isn't a luxury. It's a weapon. Without one, the narrative around Shedeur got louder, more chaotic, and in some cases, downright unfair. Whispers started surfacing about bad interviews, about arrogance, about his father's shadow being too big. None of these things ever seemed to come with actual quotes or named sources, but it didn't matter. In the NFL, perception becomes reality, and every team chose safety over guts. By the end of the draft, it was clear. Teams weren't just passing on Shadeur's talent. They were passing on the media firestorm that came with the Sanders name. And yet, here's where the irony hits hardest. The same kid that 32 teams weren't sure about is now showing glimpses of something they can't ignore. He's calm in the pocket, hard to shake. He takes hits and pops right back up. In a league filled with can't-miss prospects who fold the moment pressure touches their jersey, Shedeur has done the opposite. He stood tall in chaos. It felt personal, not just to the fans, not just to Coach Prime. You could see it in the way Shedeur carried himself in the post-draft interviews. Calm, confident, unbothered on the surface. But make no mistake, that chip on his shoulder didn't go away. It got sharper. And let's be honest, this wasn't just a fall. This was a public embarrassment. Quarterbacks with half his production from smaller programs with limited tape went ahead of him. Guys with mechanical issues, guys labeled as projects, guys who'd never taken a real snap in front of 80,000 fans in a nationally televised game, all went ahead. Some of them may never see the field. Yet Shedeur, he's already starting. Even worse, some teams badly needed a quarterback and still passed, including Mike Tomlin's Pittsburgh Steelers, who had picked 21. All signs pointed to them needing a franchise guy. And their Shedeur was sitting right there, available, talented, hungry, passed on. Instead, they went defense. It's easy to argue defense was the safe choice, that drafting a quarterback brings pressure when you're not ready to hand over the keys. But looking back, this might go down as one of those they had him, and they passed moments, the kind franchises regret for a decade. That's the type of fall we're talking about. From QB1 potential to wait. Who picked him? Status. All because of perception, rumors, media noise, and the oversized shadow of a famous last name. That's what turned Shadur Sanders from a projected top-tier draft pick into a fifth-round gamble. But here's where it gets dangerous, because now the gamble might be paying off for Cleveland. And for every other team that passed on him, the regret is already setting in. Because what happens when the guy you overlooked starts winning? And remembers every single name that was called before his, you feel it, the pressure. And if you're the team who looked him right in the eyes and said, no thanks, just know he heard you. All 141 of you. Then came the moment nobody expected. Aaron Rodgers opened his mouth, and the entire NFL world had to stop and listen. Rodgers, the future Hall of Famer, Super Bowl winner, and one of the most brutally honest quarterbacks in NFL history, doesn't hand out compliments. Especially not to rookies, especially not to fifth-rounders. If you followed his career, you already know he's not the rah-rah good vibes type. If he says something about a player, it's either direct praise or direct fire. No in between. So when Aaron Rodgers went public with comments about Shadur Sanders, eyebrows shot up. Because this wasn't a generic, yeah, the kid's playing well type of quote. It was strategic, deliberate, personal. Rodgers didn't just say Shadur had talent. He said he saw himself in Shadur. And for those who know Rodgers' story, that wasn't just a comparison, it was a warning shot to the league. Rewind back to 2005. Aaron Rodgers famously endured a draft slide of his own. He was projected to go number 1 overall. He ended up going 24th to the Green Bay Packers. That moment, sitting in the green room, waiting, watching teams pass, became the blueprint for his career. He was pissed. He remembered every single name called before his. And he turned it into fuel year after year, burning defenses and proving every GM wrong. Now here he is, watching Shadur Sanders go through the same thing, only this draft slide was longer, more dramatic, and far riskier. And what does Rodgers do? He gives Shadur his cosign. Not just as a fan, as a peer. Think about the weight of that. Rodgers has played against the best, coached under legends, shared locker rooms with future Hall of Famers, and now he's saying, I see something in that kid. The same kid NFL teams wouldn't touch until the 5th round. Rodgers mentioned how Shadur had been patient, how he'd worked on his craft, how he carried himself through the noise and pressure. And that word again, patience. Rodgers knows better than anyone how slow development can build greatness. He sat behind Brett Favre for 3 years. He didn't rush into early success because success wasn't handed to him. He earned it, tempered it, evolved. That's why his endorsement matters so much more than a Skip Bayless soundbite or some Twitter analyst shouting into the void. Rodgers isn't reciting box scores. He's reading between the lines. He's watching the poise, the footwork, the emotional restraint. The things that don't show up on ESPN graphics, but do show up on Sundays. That kind of validation isn't just rare, it's dangerous. Because now Shadur has something many rookie quarterbacks don't get, room to breathe and still build mystique. And Rodgers didn't stop there. He went further, pointing out what people aren't giving Shadur credit for: subtle things like how he's handling blitz pressure, how quickly he's processing defenses, how he's not cracking under the spotlight that literally never turns off for him. Rodgers is watching him closely. He's tracking the moments that separate starters from stars, and he's not just being supportive, he's being predictive. Think about it. Aaron Rodgers isn't saying, Shadur has potential. He's saying, give him time, he's going to be a problem for this league. Now pause and realize how insane that is. This is a 5th round pick, a media punching bag, someone half the league labeled a development project. And now he's got one of the greatest quarterbacks of this generation saying, yeah, I've been there. He's like me. People underestimate what that type of praise does, both inside and outside the locker room. Fans start paying closer attention. Coaches start asking questions. GMs start panicking, because maybe passing on Shadur wasn't superstition. Maybe it was a mistake. And yes, Rodgers has been around long enough to know his words carry weight. He didn't say what he said just to be nice. He knows how narratives work in the NFL. Once the league deems you a draft steal, your window starts swinging wide open, and Rodgers just kicked it off the hinges. Some players never get that kind of endorsement in their entire careers. Shadur just got it before his rookie season is even over. And here's the wildest part. Rodgers didn't say this while looking into camera for a documentary or giving some post-retirement TED Talk. He said it while actively preparing to return from injury in the thick of a comeback focused entirely on the speed of the league. If in that moment Shadur was on his mind, that tells you everything you need to know about who's really worth watching right now. So now look at the scoreboard. Rodgers publicly vouching. NFL veterans taking notice. Mike Tomlin, admitting he saw greatness on tape and passed anyway, and Shedeur sitting silently, working, letting everyone else run their mouths while he studies tape, locks in, and waits for the next 60 minutes to show the rest of the league what one GOAT and one missed opportunity already proved true. He doesn't need to scream his worth. Rodgers just did it for him, and the league is finally listening. Mike Tomlin doesn't talk just to fill space. He's one of the most respected head coaches in the NFL, known for his consistency, his discipline, and maybe most of all, his ability to read people. So when Tomlin recently got asked about Shadur Sanders and responded with what sounded like praise dipped in remorse, people leaned in. Because Tomlin didn't just say he's a good player like a coach giving a neutral answer at the podium. He said Shedeur had a toughness that doesn't get talked about enough and a competitive spirit that people overlook. That's a direct quote from one of the best developers of talent in the entire sport. And if you've been paying attention, those exact words, toughness and spirit, are what a franchise looks for when they're hunting for their guy. That face of the team energy. That unshakable edge that makes a quarterback more than just a stat collector. That killer mindset. So let's ask the obvious question. If Mike Tomlin saw those traits in Shedeur, if he saw the toughness on tape, if the competitive fire was so apparent, why didn't he draft him? The Steelers had picked 21. They were in range, they had a need. The signs were clear. And yet they went with Oregon defensive tackle Derek Harmon, a solid player, no doubt, but not a game-changing, franchise-defining piece the way a quarterback can be, especially in today's NFL. So what happened there? Was it fear of the prime effect? Was it the media attention? Was it the pressure of drafting a quarterback with a famous name and a bigger spotlight than most rookies? Maybe. Or maybe, like far too many teams during this year's draft, Pittsburgh got caught up in the narrative noise. They listened to the idea that Shedeur wasn't mature or NFL ready. They second-guessed what they saw on tape with what they were hearing in headlines. Big mistake. Because now, only months removed from the draft, Tomlin's standing at the mic praising the exact quarterback who could have been theirs, and is now gearing up to beat them. Think about the timing. This weekend, Shadur Sanders suits up to face the Pittsburgh Steelers, led by Tomlin, in one of the most symbolically loaded matchups of the season. It's not just another regular season game. This is the kind of moment that gets turned into highlight reels if Shedeur plays well, because it's personal. You can guarantee he's circled this game. You already know Coach Prime has whispered about it in his ear. You know they passed on you, right? Oh yeah, he knows. Pittsburgh's quarterback situation right now, still unresolved. They're stuck between temporary band-aids and backup options, hoping someone steps up. And now they're walking straight into a game against the guy they could have had, starting for their divisional rival. It's the perfect setup for a revenge narrative. And what makes this worse, what drives this deeper, is that Tomlin's compliment came after the fact. He didn't say Shedeur had toughness before the draft. He didn't argue with the doubters or publicly defend Sanders when he was slipping down the board. He saw the film, recognized the grit, and still walked away. But now, facing the consequences, he's acknowledging what he saw. Which means, deep down, there's regret. And that regret could come with a price tag, a multi-million-dollar one. Remember this, draft position doesn't just affect salary, it affects the identity of a franchise. When you pass on a quarterback and he turns into a star, you don't just lose points on paper, you lose years of progress. Think about how long it takes to find a quarterback in the NFL. A real one, not a system guy, not a game manager. A real alpha, teams wander for decades. The Browns were a carousel of quarterbacks for almost 20 years before they got anything close to stable. The Jets have drafted quarterback after quarterback and still haven't replaced their last true franchise leader. Even the Steelers, since Big Ben retired, have been dabbling in half answers. They had a shot, a kid with stats, swagger, and the will to prove every critic wrong. And instead of taking the leap, they played it safe. Now Shedeur's in Cleveland, warming up, learning on the fly, taking hits, throwing touchdowns, facing the fire weekly. And Mike Tomlin. He's watching from across the sideline talking about what could have been. How many times have we seen this before? A team needs a quarterback, passes on one, and watches him torch them for the next 5 seasons, all while they chase a solution. Tomlin may be the latest chapter in that story. And the craziest part is he knew. He said it was on tape. He said the fire was there. He said it flat out. So what stopped him? Was it pressure from above? Was it playing it too conservative? Was it just a misstep? Whatever the reason, the regret is starting to show. And this weekend might be the breaking point. Because it's one thing to say we believe in our pick, but it's another when the guy you passed on walks into your stadium and outplays your entire QB room. That's not just a missed opportunity. That's a headline. That's a moment that defines entire front office careers. And that's the kind of moment Shadur Sanders is built for. Let's talk numbers. Because while the drama, the headlines, and Rodgers' endorsement make for great content, there's one cold reality that NFL front offices can't ignore. Mistakes in the draft cost millions. And this one might go down as the most expensive lesson the league has seen in years. Shadur Sanders was taken with the 142nd pick. That's a fifth-round draft slot. And with that comes something every NFL GM loves: cheap labor. In a league where franchises are constantly walking a salary cap tightrope, every million saved matters, especially at the quarterback position. To put it bluntly, first-round quarterbacks cost a fortune, even the ones who flop. Fifth-round quarterbacks? Practically free by comparison. Let's do the math. On average, a first-round quarterback deal clocks in north of $15, $20 million guaranteed. They also come with fifth-year options, heavy escalators, and endorsement opportunities out of the gate. The player is immediately the face of the franchise, and the pressure to start them right away is overwhelming. Now take a fifth-rounder. 4 years, roughly $4.5 million total. No fifth-year option, no guarantees, just an opportunity and a clipboard, unless they ball out. That's what makes what Cleveland potentially pulled off so wild. If Shadur Sanders pans out, if he even becomes a top 20 NFL starter, the value the Browns get from him is unmatched. They'll be paying pennies on the dollar for starting quarterback production. While teams like the Giants, the Raiders, and the Titans are pouring top dollar into young QBs with uncertain futures, Cleveland can sit back and let Shadur develop pressure-free, financially painless. And they didn't even have to tank a season to get him. Here's where it starts to look bad for everyone else. The Giants took a quarterback early, so did Tennessee. The Raiders made their move. Each of those franchises had question marks under center. Each had opportunities to draft Shadur at some point in the first 3 rounds. None did. Instead, they're shelling out contracts loaded with guarantees. Publicly committed. Locked in. If their guy stumbles, they're stuck. If the Browns' pick doesn't pan out, no big deal. Fifth-rounders fail all the time. No headlines, no major payout. But if he does hit, it's highway robbery. The NFL is a business, and the quarterback position is the most expensive asset in that business. That's why success stories like Brock Purdy set the league on fire. A 7th-round quarterback leading a playoff offense while making backup-level money changes how an entire team allocates cash. It means more money for receivers, for edge rushers, for offensive linemen, for everyone. And that's the edge Cleveland just stole out from underneath the entire league, and they might not even fully realize it yet. What's even crazier is that while Sanders is already showing progress, flashes of touch, mobility, that classic it factor, rumors are now swirling that the Browns are still shopping for a quarterback. Newsweek recently dropped a projection with Alabama's Ty Simpson pegged as the Browns' potential 2026 pick. Pick 27 via Jacksonville. Wait, what? So let's get this straight. A rookie quarterback falls into your lap for next to nothing. He shows flashes of composure behind a shaky offensive line, demonstrates toughness that's earned praise from Tomlin himself, and completes what was supposed to be a developmental season prematurely. And already you're scouting his replacement? It sounds insane. On the surface, anyway. But maybe it's not. Maybe, just maybe, the Browns are doing the smartest thing of all, hedging their bets. Because quarterback is the one position you simply never stop evaluating. Not until you're absolutely certain you found the guy. No franchise wins long-term by putting blind faith into early promise. Just ask the Jets, or the Panthers, or Washington. The Browns can afford to sit tight, watch Shadur struggle and shine, and at the same time line up contingency plans without breaking a sweat. If it works, you just got your franchise QB for practically free. If it does, you kept your powder dry for next year. That's corporate-level risk management. Cold? Yes, but smart? Absolutely. Still, there's a flip side. Because if Shadur continues to grow, if the flashes start turning into full drives, if he locks in with the speed of the league and starts stringing together wins, then Cleveland won. Point blank. They get their quarterback, for less than what some teams are paying for long snappers. And not just any quarterback, a guy who came in with pressure, expectations, second-guessing, and lived through it. That's worth more than any draft model, scouting grade, or 3-cone drill. And for the rest of the league, every GM who skipped him, every coordinator who dismissed the tape, Every owner who passed because of media distraction, this could become the story they try to explain away for years. It becomes one of those cautionary tales. You know, how 31 teams missed on this guy. Because of who his dad was, or the league that let narratives kill real evaluation. And meanwhile, Cleveland just smiles and signs the check. Because at the end of the day, they didn't break the bank. They just broke the system. Shadeur's path into the NFL was already complicated, but the moment he touched the field in a Browns uniform, the pressure dialed up to something most quarterbacks never experience. Fifth-round pick or not, his name carried weight. Prime son. Prime time expectations. The media lights were brighter, the critics were louder, and every single snap was dissected like he'd been drafted 1 overall. So how did he handle it, honestly? Better than people want to admit, let's be real. If you just look at the stats, they don't scream superstar. Through his first 5 starts, Shedeur threw for 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, and just over 930 yards. His completion percentage hovered around 55%. On paper, it's average. Maybe even disappointing if you remove context, which a lot of critics love to do. But context matters, because what most people aren't talking about is the situation he walked into. Let's be clear, the 2025 Cleveland Browns have been a dumpster fire. Injuries, questionable coaching, a rotating carousel at receiver, an O-line that's been more of a revolving door than a wall. No one was supposed to thrive in this system, not a rookie, not a veteran, not Tom Brady resurrected from retirement. Shedeur was thrown into that chaos, not prepped, not backed by a full offseason of starter reps. He didn't get the golden path to development that top picks get. No time to settle in, no soft landing spots. He was tossed into the fire like an emergency plan C, and what'd he do? He didn't fold. He stayed in the pocket and kept throwing. He showed mobility, racking up over 120 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown in those early starts. He took sacks and still came back the next series ready to move the chains. More importantly, he looked like he belonged. That part is huge because NFL locker rooms can tell. Don't think for a second that veterans don't watch how rookie quarterbacks carry themselves. They notice the silent confidence, the willingness to take blame, the refusal to panic, and Shedeur. He passed the vibe check fast. Even when the numbers didn't look pretty, the effort never dipped. That's the kind of intangible that can't be coached. That's internal. That's built from the pressure of Jackson State. That's the result of a freshman QB being coached by his Hall of Fame dad and tested under the national microscope from day one. And that's why Mike Tomlin mentioned things you can't see in the stat sheet when he spoke about Shedeur. The toughness, the fire. That internal clock that separates the guys who want to survive from the ones who want to win. Look at the moments, not the total yards. Look at the games where defenders came in scot-free and lit him up, and he still came back the next play firing. No yelling, no flailing, just keeping the game moving. That's what coaches watch when they evaluate more than the box score. Now compare that to other rookie quarterbacks this year, guys taken in the first and second rounds. Look around the league. How many highly drafted rookies are blowing away expectations? Not many. Most are struggling. Most are being sheltered by conservative play calling or soft openers. Shedeur, he's fighting every week, and he's doing it without the benefit of the doubt. Critics love to float that he's not NFL-ready line based on turnovers or a rough quarter, but they conveniently ignore context. Bad lines, brutal matchups, limited prep, a team coaching for its job mid-season. And this is where it gets really rich, because you know what usually happens to fifth-round QBs? They ride the bench for a year and fade out of relevance. Most don't even get this close to starting, let alone start multiple weeks and put up wins under dysfunctional circumstances. So ask yourself, if a fifth-round pick has to step in early, face real pressure, and walk out standing tall, do you penalize that, or do you recognize it? Aaron Rodgers recognized it. Mike Tomlin recognized it. Hell, Rodgers even drew a direct parallel to his own journey. Let that sink in. We're comparing a guy being ridiculed for not lighting it up in year one to a Hall of Famer who sat for 3 years before touching the field. And while people are quick to throw shade at Shedeur for a couple of early interceptions, they forget how many greats made those same mistakes, and much worse, in year one. Josh Allen, wildly inaccurate as a rookie. Justin Fields couldn't throw over 200 yards early in his career. Peyton Manning threw 28 interceptions as a rookie, and NFL analysts still said, he has it. Why does Shedeur have to be perfect? Why does he have to prove twice as much for half as much grace? Maybe we know why. Maybe the last name brings a different standard. Maybe the swagger rubs people the wrong way. Maybe being unapologetically himself in a league that demands robotic humility makes people uncomfortable. Whatever the reason, here's the truth. He's not backing down. Wins or losses, stats or struggles, Shedeur is still standing, still smiling, still taking snaps. And every week he survives the pressure, the whispers get a little quieter, and the regret from 31 teams gets a little louder. And now we've arrived at the game that could flip the entire script. This weekend, the narrative comes full circle, because Shadur Sanders is set to walk into the same stadium occupied by the coach who praised what he saw, yet still passed on him. The Pittsburgh Steelers, Mike Tomlin, pick 21. This isn't just a matchup. This is a reckoning. One of those rare moments where the past meets the present in real time, and if you don't think Shedeur circled this game on his calendar the moment the schedule dropped, you don't understand who we're dealing with. Of course it matters. Of course this is personal, because all the talk, the doubters, the missed pick, the cheap contract, the fifth-round label, it all leads here. The team that could have taken him, the coach who knew what was on tape, the franchise that needed a quarterback more than it needed another jersey on defense. And yet, they said no. Now they line up across from a kid they didn't believe in. And what happens next? Redemption or regret, it all plays out on this field. You can guarantee Coach Prime's been talking to him all week. You can practically hear it in his voice. Show M what they missed. Show M what they passed on. And Shedeur? He doesn't say much. That's never been his thing, but you'd better believe the fire's there. Quiet revenge is still revenge. And let's be honest, Pittsburgh's quarterback situation isn't exactly locked down. They've been shuffling between interim answers, mid-tier veterans, and wishful thinking. Nothing consistent, nothing elite. All while a potential franchise quarterback is now staring them down from across the line of scrimmage. That stings, because this isn't theoretical anymore. This isn't just about what ifs and maybe down the road. It's now, right now. What if Shedeur balls out? What if, on the field where he could have been the home starter, he torches the defense instead? What if he throws for 300 yards, 3 touchdowns, and walks out with the win? This isn't just about beating a rival. This is a moment that would crack open the Shedeur story wide and force the league and every critic to rethink everything they said back in May. Suddenly, it's not about a fifth-round rookie trying to survive. It's about a 21-year-old quarterback who waited for his turn, ate every bit of disrespect handed to him, and dropped a bomb on the team that waved him off. Even from a league-wide standpoint, this is the type of moment the NFL loves, underdog turned executioner. Formerly overlooked, now unavoidable. Look at the matchup, Cleveland versus Pittsburgh, already one of the nastiest, most physical rivalries in the AFC. It's never been pretty between these franchises, but adding this, Shedeur standing in the pocket, taking hits from the Steelers, front seven, getting up and slicing them apart, this makes for football television gold. If he wins, it becomes the moment of the year. And you can feel the nervousness around Pittsburgh's front office already. Because Tomlin's comments praising Shedeur can't be walked back now. They're stamped, permanent. So if Shedeur puts that competitive spirit on display live, against them, it might just haunt them. And the fans know it too. Steelers fans are smart. They know quarterback play has been a roller coaster recently. They're tired of the patchwork, the inconsistency, the excuses if Shedeur goes off. There will be very loud questions about who's calling the shots and why they let a potential franchise QB walk into a rival's locker room. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, a W here changes everything. Let's not pretend the Browns have had it easy. Their legacy of chaos and quarterback failures spans decades, but landing a win off the back of the most disrespected QB in the draft, that would ignite the fan base. It would validate the risk, shut down the doubters, and activate the one thing Cleveland has never consistently had behind center: hope. This is the game that could light that fuse. Of course, no one's pretending Shedeur needs to be perfect. He's a rookie, still learning, still adapting to the terrifying speed and complexity of the pro game. But this moment isn't about perfection. This is about delivery, playing with fire, showing growth under pressure, taking the hit and hitting back harder. Because here's the thing about players with something to prove: you don't give them a reason. You don't let the guy with a chip on his shoulder bigger than the stadium walk in motivated and focused. And Pittsburgh did just that. They handed him the blueprint, said no thanks in front of the whole world, gave their pick to someone else, and then turned around months later and praised him on camera. That kind of contradiction fuels athletes like Shedeur. He doesn't just want to win. He wants you to remember why you should have believed in him when no one else did. And that's what drives this game from just another division matchup to a career checkpoint, not just for Shedeur, but for the people who watched him fall and said nothing. Whether he wins or loses, something about this moment is going to stick. For the fans, for the Browns, for the Steelers, and for every scout, analyst, and general manager who thought draft position was destiny. Because if Shedeur leaves Heinz Field holding the football, flanked by cameras, with another team's regrets echoing behind him, that's no longer a draft slide. That's a legacy starter. Of course, the critics haven't gone quiet. Even with Aaron Rodgers co-signing him, even with Mike Tomlin singing his praises, even with flashes of brilliance on the field, there's still noise. Every time Shedeur takes a snap, the stat police are right there waiting with their hot takes and highlight reels, shouting about numbers like they're scripture. 6 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, a modest completion rate, just over 900 passing yards through 5 starts. See, they say, he's not that guy. The hype was overblown. The league was right. And that's the moment where you realize how ridiculous things have gotten. Because for some reason, we're holding a 5th-round rookie, drafted without the benefit of a full offseason, thrown into a backup role turned starter overnight, and placed in one of the most unstable offensive systems in the league, to the same standard as a top 10 pick with a franchise built around them. Let's be clear. The numbers alone, they don't tell the story. They rarely do. It's the context, the chaos Shedeur entered, the lack of prep time, the suspect protection, the pressure-packed spot he's been asked to survive in, that separates his stats from true underperformance. There's a difference between struggling because you have talent gaps and struggling because you've been thrown into a broken system. Shedeur's not out there crumbling under bright lights. He's surviving a storm that would swallow most rooks whole. Let's not forget, expectations for 5th-round picks are usually keep the seat warm, hold a clipboard, maybe play in garbage time. At most, they flash in a preseason game and fight for a backup role. Shedeur's been doing way more than that. He's reading blitzes, escaping pressure, keeping drives alive with his legs when the scheme leaves him hanging. He's made some mistakes, but he's also shown moments of brilliance. Deep sideline throws, midfield touch passes, pump fakes that window season DBs, and guts to take hits and still get the ball downfield when most rookies would fold. On top of that, he's playing without elite weapons around him. He doesn't have a true WR1. The Browns' offensive line is a constant shuffle due to injuries, and the play calling lacks rhythm. So the question isn't why he's struggled in certain moments, it's how he's still managing to shine despite all of it. Now, compare that to some of the quarterbacks drafted ahead of him. Several top picks are finishing games with numbers just as underwhelming and less excuses for why they're stalling. They came in with better lines, stronger rosters, and coaching staffs built around them from day one. Yet here Shedeur is, matching or outperforming some of them despite starting from rock bottom. Even more telling, watch the body language of his teammates. They're buying in. You don't have to spin a stat sheet to know what happens when a locker room respects the quarterback. Players fight harder, they protect him more. They block longer, extend plays, talk different in post-game interviews. That's what's starting to happen in Cleveland. Not because the scoreboard is pretty, but because respect is earned one throw, one hit, and one bounce back at a time. The Browns have had quarterbacks with prettier numbers. They've had first-rounders with shiny scouting reports. Most of them, gone, forgotten, replaced, because this league isn't just about raw talent. It's also about mentality, grit, growth, leadership under pressure. And for all the things Shedeur is still figuring out, nobody, and I mean nobody, can say he lacks backbone. That was the part even Rodgers pointed out. Shedeur knows this process will take time and he's not rushing it. That kind of self-awareness? Rare. Most young quarterbacks obsessed with proving everyone wrong try to do too much, too fast. They chase highlight reels. They melt down under expectation. Shedeur. He's sitting in the pocket, making the reads, taking the lessons. Every sack, every misfire, every mistake, he's learning, storing it. And while the world zeroes in on touchdown to interception ratios, Shedeur's preparing for the long game, because development isn't a straight line. It never has been. Want receipts? Peyton Manning set records for interceptions in his first year. Josh Allen was mocked for being too raw. Jalen Hurts got benched in college and nearly discarded early in Philly. All they needed was time. Now, we watch those names on Sundays while 15 other, more polished draft picks are watching from the couches of early retirement. So no, the numbers don't scare people who know what they're watching. They're just snapshots, incomplete and overstated by those looking for reasons to reconfirm old biases. Was Shedur's early season perfect? Not even close. But perfect isn't the goal for rookies. Progress is. And it's happening. It's just not flashy. It's not packaged for ESPN's top 10. It's in the little details: quicker second reads, tighter mechanics, more controlled footwork. Less panic, more presence. It's in how he breathes before big snaps. How fast he resets after big hits. That's where you find out if a guy is just here to play or here to prove every team wrong. And right now, Shadur Sanders is doing both. So where does all of this leave us? A fifth-round quarterback. A legendary dad. A draft slide that turned into a public spectacle. A Hall of Famer quietly saying, "Yeah, I've seen this movie before." A Super Bowl coach admitting the fire was there on tape and still walking the other way. A franchise in Cleveland that might have accidentally stumbled onto the best bargain in football. When you zoom out, you start to see the bigger picture. This isn't just about one rookie trying to put up numbers. This is about how the NFL thinks, how narratives spread, how fear and ego and bias can cloud judgment in those war rooms. Teams didn't just draft other players instead of Shadur. A lot of them looked at his last name, his dad's personality, the cameras, the jewelry, the social media clips, and they flinched. They saw the show, not the substance. They saw Prime's son, not the kid who sat in dark film rooms at Jackson State, who learned to process defenses, who took brutal hits at Colorado and kept getting back up. They forgot the most important rule: you don't win games with narratives. You win them with dudes who refuse to break. And that's what Rodgers recognized. Rodgers didn't see a TikTok star. He saw a quarterback who had been forced to grow up in front of the entire world. Someone who took the hard route, HBCU to Power 5, media frenzy, constant scrutiny, and still delivered. Someone who knows what it feels like to be passed over, doubted, and then asked to save a franchise anyway. He knows that feeling because he lived it. When Rodgers sat in that green room in 2005, watching his dreams slip with every pick, he built something inside himself that numbers can't measure. Call it pride, call it spite, call it obsession. But it became fuel. It powered every throw, every comeback, every "how did he do that?" moment for the next decade and a half. Now he's looking at Shadur Sanders and seeing that same spark. That same, "you're going to regret this" energy. And that's what should scare the teams that passed on him, because draft mistakes happen every year. Guys bust, guys surprise you. But every once in a while, there's a miss so obvious in hindsight that it becomes part of league history. Rodgers dropping to 24, Tom Brady going in the 6th, Brock Purdy becoming Mr. Irrelevant and then running the NFC. If Shadur keeps trending upward, if the flashes grow into stretches and the stretches turn into seasons, his name will be on that list. And the Browns, for once in their miserable quarterback history, they might finally be on the right side of the story. Rumors and mock drafts are already floating out there about Cleveland looking at another quarterback in 2026. Some analysts predict they'll grab a guy like Ty Simpson, just in case. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. Right now, it's just speculation, nothing locked in. But if Shadur turns the corner, if he takes this disrespect and converts it into production, those projections will disappear real fast. Because no GM in their right mind replaces a young, cheap franchise quarterback who's already proven he can handle heat. Especially not one with a fifth-round cap hit and a chip on his shoulder the size of the stadium. That's the potential here. That's the upside. Shadur isn't just fighting to be good enough to start. He's fighting to become the walking reminder that 141 picks were wrong, that the league let fear and noise drown out film and facts, that the so-called downside of being Deion's son, the cameras, the personality, the expectations, actually forged someone built for chaos. The swagger, that comes in handy when 300-pound linemen are trying to put you in the turf. The confidence. You need that when you've thrown 2 picks and still have to drop back again with the game on the line. The spotlight. If you've already lived under it since college, a Sunday in Cleveland doesn't feel so big anymore. And that's the beautiful twist in this whole thing. The same stuff people used to doubt him, the last name, the personality, the attitude, might be the exact reasons he succeeds. The league tried to punish him for who he was, not what he put on tape. Now he has a chance to make them pay for underestimating all of it. Rodgers turned his slide into a Hall of Fame career. Now he's basically handing Shadur the blueprint. Be patient, put in the work, block out the noise, and then wreck everybody's memory of that draft. Mike Tomlin, he's already admitted he saw the traits. Other coaches are starting to see them too. Front offices won't say it publicly yet, but you can bet there are people in those buildings replaying their draft meetings in their heads and wondering, did we overthink this? Did we let the stuff around him blind us to what he actually is? If Shedeur keeps progressing, if the stats start matching the toughness Rodgers and Tomlin keep talking about, those same people will be the ones whispering in ownership's ear, "We missed. Badly." And that's where this gets fun, because the draft isn't a verdict. It's a guess that Shadur Sanders is now on a mission to expose. So as this story keeps unfolding, as he takes more snaps, as he makes more plays, as he fixes the flaws and doubles down on his strengths, remember where it started. A kid who was supposed to be a first-rounder, left in the green room of the 5th round. A league that thought it knew him, a dad who stood by him, a Hall of Famer who said, "Just wait." The draft slide looked like a humiliation. It might turn out to be the best thing that ever happened to him, because now every throw has meaning. Every win has context. Every mistake becomes a lesson, not a label. And every success is pointed straight back at the teams who chose someone else. So here's the real question. In 5 years, when we look back at the 2025 draft, are we going to be talking about the guys who went in the top 10? Or are we going to be talking about the quarterback who went 142nd and made the entire league eat their scouting reports? Did the NFL just create its next great revenge story? Or did they just hand Cleveland the greatest discount at quarterback we've seen in a generation? You tell me. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Did teams let narratives and drama cloud their judgment on Shadur Sanders? Do you think he turns this slide into a Rodgers-level comeback story? And does he start proving it against the Steelers right now? If you're not already locked in, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications, because this is just the beginning of Shedur's journey, and if the league really did sleep on him, you're going to want to be here when he finally wakes them up.